Hello, Tom.
Hi, Jake. How's it going?
Yeah, it is going well. How are you this fine day?
Pretty good. Looking forward to talking or discussing our parenting techniques.
Parenting. I know you've done a great deal of research and you've got some very strong opinions and methodology behind your parenting. So, yeah, I'm looking forward to maybe I can learn a few things from you there. My own parenting skills a little bit more. I don't know, kind of make it up as I go along. So I think we got different techniques. So it's going to be a good call. Your parenting skills, your technique. I'm presuming you came upon it when you knew that, or you found out you were about to become a parent, and you decided that you wanted to prepare yourself and develop the best possible technique or skill for parenting. Is that right?
This is one of those questions that sometimes you ask me where I'm not 100% sure how I stumbled across it. I think it was, you're right in the sense that it was either before or after I became a dad. I had one of those Audible credits. So they billed me and I had like 12 credits. And I bought, I think it was 9 parenting books.
Wow. See, you always go to town with your... when you do something, you really do it properly. I've always admired you for that.
Well, they weren't all good, is what I was going to say, though. Some of them are pretty bad. Some of them are quite unhelpful. But in stumbling through all the various books, you sort of realise, you get a little bit of an understanding of what the types of approaches are. And one, because it wasn't just books that I got through, it was also, I also looked on YouTube and that sort of thing. Yeah. And I found something called peaceful parenting, also sometimes known as philosophical parenting, which is right up my alley, as you're aware.
Yeah, I can imagine that you kind of...
Before I get into it, though, because I can sense myself starting to talk, did you want to open with anything? Because I know that you wanted to say... Did you want to say your approach to things, or did you want to...
I'm not sure. I think one thing I do try to do is be supportive of them. I like them to know that they can trust me. And occasionally I have some sit-down, fantastic conversations with them about school, this, that, and the other, which makes my day. So sometimes they really open up to me. I don't know, I try to be supportive. At the same time, I try to guide them where I can. But I'm certainly no expert. So yeah, that's where I'm at with it, really. But I'm absolutely fascinated to hear about this methodology that you've adopted, because you've talked about it a few times to me, and I'm all ears. So I think usually when something has made an impression on you, it's because it's pretty damn hot. So tell me about your technique.
Still very much a student of it. So I would say that before I go into the basics of it and then some examples, there are some people that I like to credit. The way that I actually found the content and that sort of thing is through a guy named Stefan Molyneux. He's a big advocate of peaceful parenting. He's quite a controversial figure. So I'm not necessarily saying I agree with everything that he agrees with.
Okay.
But with respect to parenting, a lot of this stuff comes from him, which is why I wanted to credit it.
Okay.
There's a particular book, and the book is called Parent Effectiveness Training, and I think they've sold over like 5 million copies now.
Okay.
So it's a major bestseller. So if what I'm thinking is that because this is made really for parents who want to know, our audiobook is made for parents who want to know more about how they can parent their children, I think, in a peaceful way. So if that's your interest, then I definitely think you should check out PET, which is Parent Effectiveness Training with Dr. Thomas Gordon.
Okay.
And if we get to it, there's like a special mention for conflict management or conflict avoidance. And that's there's a really, really good video on YouTube by someone called Teal Swan. The YouTube video was just amazing. If you have any sort of conflict issues or fear of conflict, then I would highly recommend watching that. But to get to the basics of peaceful parenting, by definition, it is a complete rejection of any use of force. So you're taking hitting off the table, threatening, physical, any physical stuff, and also intimidation. So essentially, it is you not using your size against your child to make them do stuff. And so what some people think about this is that, okay, well, your kids are just going to walk all over you then.
Yeah, you're a lefty, hippie, wishy-washy kind of thing.
Yeah, you won't discipline your children, all this sort of thing. It's not that. It's effectively preparation and negotiation, and it's all about essentially, conversing with your child. And I know that we need to talk about these in different sort of age groups, because I'm very much focused on the toddler age group at the moment, because that's how I spend my days. Yeah. But it is very much as soon as they're, basically what they say is that if you attempt to teach your child and negotiate with your child, even if they're really young, they will be able to negotiate with you, and they will understand you more if you try to reason with them from a very early age. So in some instances, people will say, well, there's no point because they just don't understand. If you try to do it as early as possible, they'll understand earlier.
Well, you could say that about there's no point talking to your baby, or no point talking to your 1-year-old or something, because they can't understand you. I mean, they can't understand you until they do understand you. But if you never talk to them, they're never going to understand you. And I absolutely agree with what you just said, because whether we like it or not, negotiation is a fundamental part of life. You cannot get by without it. And so the earlier they grow accustomed to that, I think, the better. So I'm liking what I'm hearing so far.
When discussing parenting, part of it is important to understand that the parent-child relationship is voluntary for the parent, but involuntary for the child. So children can't choose to leave their families. They don't choose to be born and can't leave. So the reason why this is relevant is that quality of a relationship tends to decrease in involuntary relationships. So the answer that's given, or the example rather that's given, if you were sort of in an arranged marriage, let's say you were married to someone and they essentially, they didn't necessarily want to be there. How good a husband would you have to be in order to make that woman love you voluntarily?
Wow. Yeah.
And that's how good a parent you have to be, because children don't have that freedom that everyone else has in a relationship. So you and I are really good friends. We voluntarily have our relationship, in a marriage. You can, although it's slightly different with a marriage, it is still voluntary. Anyone can at any point can say that's just enough for me. Yeah. But with children, that's not the case. And parents can, if they choose to, they can hit, spank, shout, or even withhold love, or threaten the survival of a dependent child. And so, basically, punishment is a failure of negotiation. We would punish because we can't convince them.
Yeah, I got on that. That's fair. I think that was a standard way.
Others.
Really, wasn't it? I mean, if I look at my own childhood, just to sort of break in here, just very, very, very briefly, I know we've talked about our childhoods, you and I, already, but, I was an only child. My father left me. My parents had a divorce before I was 1 year old. So I have no recollection of their relationship, although it must have been tempestuous. Sorry about that. Then I was raised for a bit in a sort of communal environment, but with no withholding of love or no corporal punishment or anything like this. So I was with my mum alone, just an only child, until such time. Well, until I was 10. When I went to a private school, went to boarding school, and there it was very, very different. There it was the rule of law. And I had the cane once, and I had the slipper once. And most people did. I wasn't a naughty child. I was pretty average, really. I wasn't goody two shoes, and I wasn't, tempestuous. And sorry, I got to stop saying that word. I wasn't. I wasn't a troublemaker. I was somewhere in the middle. I was an in-betweener. I've got the thought in my mind of the in-betweeners now. So anyway, I kind of experienced both sides. My mum was always very, very loving and affectionate to me and supportive, and I always felt loved, and I always felt completely supported no matter what. I knew she was on my side, and that was very, very powerful for me and very important. And that's something actually that I've brought to my own parenting skills. And that was very clear from the beginning, that I would always show my love for my kids, and that it was that there was no negotiation in that. That was it, regardless. One of my daughters, I'm not going to tell you which one, often tells me that she hates me when she's upset or she doesn't get her way. She goes, "I hate you, Daddy." And I say, even if you hate me, I love you. I always will. And so I've kind of tried to bring that supportive. I think it's really, really important that a child feels loved and supported, and that to me is one of the key roles of a parent. So I lost that when I went to boarding school, and I it was an amazing experience in many ways. It was a bit like a 4-year, well, actually, as I went to 2 boarding schools, it was a bit like a 7-year camping holiday in many ways. But I certainly wouldn't put my kids through it. No way. I lost years of time with my mum, and then I got a stepfather. And so there again, there was a different parenting technique. But I totally and utterly agree that, you should never try and take away, withhold love and sort of threaten the child that, you don't love them, or regardless of what happens, they need to feel supported, and I fully believe that. So, sorry, I had to just interject there, so apologies.
No, that's all good stuff. I mean, the thing that springs to mind with what you said about the example of when you're, I'm totally on board with what you're saying with respect to it's almost enough as a parent if they're just loved. I think you're like most of the way there if you love your child and they know that they're loved. I think a lot of the issues that we have of society are when the opposite happens.
Yeah.
One of the things that they teach in PET is I feel statements. So the use of I feel statements are useful because, again, coming back to the conflict thing, if you say I feel a particular way, it doesn't have to be right or it doesn't have to be wrong, and you're not accusing anyone of anything. So in the instance of one of your daughters saying that she hates you, the fact that you said that you love her and you always will is an amazing thing. I would consider adding an I feel statement of, that upsets Daddy when you say that, or something like that. Or I feel sad when you say that, because what happens or what they say happens. I don't want you to feel like I'm coaching you here, because you have far more parenting experience than I do.
Well, I have
but more, supposedly
it's better.
If you say, I feel sad when you say that, and you just leave it at that, all you're saying is an I feel statement. You're not judging and you're not having a go or anything.
Yeah.
But it leaves them to think about it, and it leaves them to consider whether they want to change or, So I feel statements are good in areas of conflict or something like that.
But it's interesting because my two daughters are very different characters. They both have the same parents, same upbringing, everything the same. But they're very different characters. And one of them has never said anything like that. Never would, I'm sure. And the other one, she tells me these things when she's upset, but then she makes up for it, and she'll give me a little card saying how much she loves me and things like this. So she, it's different. But I know that she doesn't mean it. It's just the heat of the moment. But I think the "I feel" statement would be a really good thing to use under those circumstances. It doesn't happen that often, but it does upset me actually when she says that. I mean, it doesn't upset me that much because I know that it's not. She doesn't really mean it. But and 10 minutes later she'll be all over me like she always normally is. She's a bit of a daddy's girl. but yeah, it isn't a good thing to say to anybody. So yeah, go on. That's a good one. I feel.
Well, coming back to where we were with respect to it's sort of like the introduction, essentially, as to why these things, or I feel these things are good to follow. And that generally speaking, you were talking about, you wouldn't hit or anything like that, but I think it's well over half. I saw one survey that said that something like 91% in the UK of mothers have hit their children at some stage. And so, generally speaking, people are very much in need of some alternative method to hitting, because I think what happens is that people really don't know what to do, and therefore they go with what their parents did.
Sure.
And it's a criticism that, in order to drive, you need a driver's license. In order to drive a taxi, you need a taxi license. And, in order to do all sorts of things, you need to qualify for. But with respect to parenting, you have sex one time and then you're a parent, essentially.
Yeah.
And we ask children, or we try and teach children, to consider the feelings of others, but we do not consider their feelings. We tell children never to use violence to solve conflicts, but threaten them when they displease us in some way. Yeah. And there's all sorts of, I don't want to go as far as saying propaganda around children, but there's phrases like, children are our future, and, I'd do anything for my children, that sort of thing. But when it comes right down to it, people don't do that. People tend to hit and threaten and shout. And so if you reject, I'm not saying you obviously, but if one rejects any sort of violence, threatening, all that stuff, then what happens is you start coming up with all sorts of creative ways that you can look for win-win solutions on things. You can give them incentives, both positive and negative. We use both types of incentives. Examples of those, I'm going to jump around a little bit here just because kind of spitballing. But positive positive incentive is...
With a pouch now. You're doing a kangaroo impression.
The positive incentive is, say, for example, if you want them to do something, but there's absolutely no reason why they should. So you haven't prepared them for anything. And preparation is a really important principle with children, because, for one thing, they don't understand the need to do things. An example of this is, let's say tomorrow, Jake, you go off for a business meeting in Japan, and you essentially going around someone's house in Japan to have dinner. You essentially have absolutely no idea what the norms are with respect to, should I sit in a chair? Do I kneel down at the table? Do I keep my shoes on? Do I take them off? How do I bow to people, etc., etc. Children don't have any of these things, so they're not sort of molded into society the way that everyone else is.
Yeah.
And so you have to prepare them both repetitively. So not just one time. They're not just going to take things in one time. You have to tell them how long, how far away something is. So examples for this type of given examples where people say, I want to go out to a restaurant, but my child just won't sit down and they won't behave, so we have to go home, something like that. Yeah. That's a really regular one. So it would be, I've heard it used where you say, Daddy wants to take you to an adult restaurant. I really want to take you to a nice restaurant. But if you want to come along, and Daddy really wants you to come along, then you have to act in a certain way, or you have to behave in a certain way. We're going on, Saturday, so 5 sleeps or something like that. And when we go through the door, if you want to come along, you have to sit in your chair, and we may want to talk, so we might be with other people. So if you want to talk, you can. It's your choice, but you don't have to. You might bring a tablet along or something if they get bored. But essentially, you're saying, okay, it's 4 more sleeps, it's 3 more sleeps, it's 2 more sleeps until the restaurant. And as soon as we walk through the door, then you're acting like an adult. And at the end, maybe you get a treat or something for behaving. And it has to be something that they actually want. That's an example of preparation.
Right. Yeah.
So repetitive. Explaining to them why they do things. So we really want to take you, but we can only take you if you're willing to act in the way that we can act. Because if you run around the table and if you shout and that sort of thing, then we can't go, and Daddy's not going to. Yeah. And you get agreements from them as well. So
that all makes sense.
Would you? And then once you have that agreement, you can then refer back to it by saying, when we talked about this, you told me that you were going to, you were happy with acting in like an adult when we were in the adult restaurant. And if you agree to things and then go back on them, then maybe Daddy would also agree to things and then go back on them. And how would you feel if I was to agree to, say, take you to the park or something like that, and then just change my mind? How would that make you feel? And so that's preparation. Positive incentives, what I was actually getting to was sometimes... there might be, so Esme sort of doesn't like to go in the pram very often, and she wants to walk, but at the same time she doesn't want to walk. She'll sort of sometimes sit down, and so it's easier for us to just, she goes in the pram, but what we don't want to do is we don't want to force her to get in the pram. So when there is instances where we can't negotiate with her, we'll do a positive incentive, like if you go in the pram, we'll give you a raspberry when you get home, or something along those lines that she would actually want, but she's not going to do if there's not some positive incentive.
It's a bit tight. And the reason raspberry for the whole
well, it depends what she's willing to give up her freedom for. Right. So sometimes a raspberry is not enough, but exactly. And sometimes actually she will say, she doesn't want a raspberry, but she wants a date or something like that, something a bit more sugary.
Right. Okay.
And, that's all about negotiation. Yeah. So sometimes people look at these as like bribes, like a negative bribe. But, the world is run by people who are willing to exchange their time for money.
That's right. Yeah.
Why do people go to work? They go to work because they have the incentive.
Yeah, totally. Actually,
and then negative...
Sorry. I just wanted to, before I forget, that's another thing that I learned. One of the things I really liked when I was doing my research was about choices. And in marketing, it's the same thing. You give people a set of choices. So you give your child a choice. So I don't know, what do you want for breakfast? This is a real problem for us because I don't know about you, but our girls. One day they want one thing for breakfast, the next day they don't like that. And then the next day they want something else for breakfast. And if they watched a YouTube, there's a lot of American YouTube channels where they're all having pancakes and stuff. So they want a pancake with maple syrup for breakfast, which is, as you know, not a very English thing. So, you never know what they're going to have for breakfast or what they want for breakfast. And so, I guess initially we would say, what would you like for breakfast? So if you're going to ask an adult, you'd say, what would you like for breakfast? And the adult will say, oh, I'd like smoked artichoke or something random. And you go, well, okay, let me rephrase this. I don't have any smoked artichoke. So would you like kippers? That's smoked. Or no, you know what I mean? So instead it's saying, would you like cereal or would you like toast? And that is a choice, and they now can choose between cereal and toast. And if neither of them, we don't like those. Okay, we've got cereal, toast, and the third option, the only possibility is you have, I don't know, yogurt or something like that. Yogurt and fruit. So you're giving them a set choice. And so they are actually empowered because they're getting to choose for themselves, but you've limited their choices to what is reasonable to you. Because if you don't limit their choices, then, children have got an amazing imagination. They can come up with the most amazing things, stuff that you couldn't imagine. As an adult, we've long lost the ability to sort of conjure up these amazing images and random thoughts. They live in almost a dream world sometimes, I think. So that was one of the things I learned, which is that you give them choice, and that's not just kids. And I've kind of brought that through learning about that as a technique for handling these problem. What do you want? Where do you want to? What do you want to do this weekend? I don't know. Never do anything. I don't want to do anything. Or we never do anything. I just mentioned earlier that we took our kids to see Father Christmas or Santa Claus in the Arctic Circle in Lapland, and the very next day we got back, one of my daughters was heard to say, "We never go anywhere. We never do anything." My wife and I, we were kind of utterly exhausted, and she had a bad foot because all the air travel and the climatic changes. Between minus 20 and 20 degrees, because we went from Finland to the Arctic Circle to Spain in winter, and it was 20 degrees in Spain and it was minus 20 there. So, all of this had a massive impact on us, and we were completely and utterly exhausted and wiped out. And then we just heard, we never go anywhere, we never do anything. So give them choices that you can manage. You restrain what those choices are, but empower them to make the decision themselves. So I just wanted to say that before I forgot. And that's one of the things that works really well. And you can take it elsewhere. It doesn't have to stick to parenting. It's something that works with clients, with friends, with anything. Give people a choice, like as if you're on a menu. The menu is this or that or the other. So anyway, sorry, carry on.
No, I 100% agree with that. The other thing, another way of saying it is, if you look at your children as though they are, fully formed human beings, which they are, and human beings have preferences. Yeah. And often it's the case that adults don't respect children's preferences. But coming back to the things that we said earlier, which was they didn't choose to be there, they can't leave. The absolute least that we can do is respect that they have some preferences and try and honour them as best you can.
Yeah. Another thing is I have, coming back to honour, I think honour is very, very important. You should honour your partner. You should honour your business partner. No, you should honour your everyone actually that's important to you in life, and generally you should be an honourable person. But that honour definitely should extend to the kids. They should feel respected. And this comes down to the love thing again, I suppose. It's like if you show someone that you love them, then you automatically honour them and they feel honoured. I had a friend who I used to work with many years ago. One day we went out for a drink, and I don't know how how conversation just sort of flows and it goes around. And it came to the point where he started crying. Totally, I was a great big guy, strong, solid guy, not the kind of crying type at all. He was always one with the girls. He went to the gym. He was life and soul of the party, and then he just started crying. And I thought, oh God, what have I said? But we just got talking about this, that, and the other. I think we were talking about books, and he was talking about The Hobbit and how he really liked it that his parents would read. His mum used to read The Hobbit to him before he went to, when he was in bed. He remembered that very well. I think it was years ago when The Lord of the Rings came out, and we were talking about it, that's right. And then I said, oh yeah, I read The Lord of the Rings, and he'd read it, and I said, my mum used to read to me before I went to bed. I really, really have a strong recollection of my mum reading The Hobbit to me. And he said, me too, that's exactly what happened. And then he started crying. And it came down to the fact that he was a middle child. He had classic middle child syndrome, according to him. He was self-diagnosed. In that, he felt that his mother always preferred his elder brother and loved his elder brother more than him and respected his elder brother more than him. And his father loved his younger sister more than him, and she got whatever she wanted. And he felt that he was the kind of neglected middle child. And he really, just years later, just down the pub, just burst into tears, and he felt, it was incredible, an unexpected emotional experience for him, brought on by talking about The Hobbit, of all things, which is an excellent book to read to your kids. But I've tried it with my daughters, and they're not really interested, because maybe it's a little boy thing more than a little girl thing. I don't know, but that's another thing. Is I've tried not to be. I've tried not to say girls should like pink, and you should wear a dress, and this and that and the other. But they've done that for themselves. They've for one reason
That's
or another.
often the case.
Yeah, they've always been very girly girls, both of them. So that doesn't.
There's nothing. I don't think there's anything wrong with that either.
No.
That's a side note.
Yeah, well, that is an element as well, because it's something that for me was very clear and obvious that my girls are very girly, and that's not anything that I've done. I've taken them to a football match. I've done all sorts of sort of traditional boy things, but they're just not interested. And likewise, I really liked my mum reading The Hobbit to me, and I've got fond memories of that. And I tried to do it, and they weren't interested. So there you are. But anyway, my two kids, they often ask me which one of them is their favourite. They say, Daddy, which one is your favourite? Is it me or is it my sister? I say, I'm never going to answer that. And then they'll try all sorts of different ways of getting me to answer that question. If we were in an aeroplane, there was only one, there were only two. There were only two parachutes. Which one of us?
You realise they're taking you through a thought experiment there, don't you?
Yeah, they are. Yeah.
I've said it before. You've got two philosophers for children.
Yeah, I have. Well, if you only had two parachutes, which one of us would get the parachute? Well, that's obviously very easy. They both would. I would give you both the parachutes and wish you all the best. And they say, okay, so you've only got one parachute and you can only carry one of us. Which one would it be? And things like this. I always get these kind of questions, and they're very clever in the way that they sort of come up with new ways of asking me which one is their favourite. And then they'll also say, yeah, she's your favourite, isn't she? I know she is. Things like that. And I've always been absolutely adamant that I do not have favourites. And I remember someone once, I'm not going to say who, someone of my parents' generation taking me to the side and saying, oh, because I had a daughter, and my eldest daughter was a toddler then, and she was nearly 2 and running around, and we were at a wedding, and my wife was pregnant with our second child, and he took me aside and he said, so you're gonna have a favourite. You always do. Everyone always has a favourite, and you'll try not to show it, but you won't. They'll know. They'll know who's your favourite. And I thought, speak for yourself. And to be honest, I genuinely do not have a favourite. They're both very different from each other. But
it's very much a speak for yourself moment, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. It's like the racist guy saying, "I'm only saying what everyone else is thinking." Really? Yeah. Everyone else is thinking it, but they're just too scared to say it. And that's me. I'm standing up and I'm taking the bullet, biting the bullet for everyone. It's like, really, first of all, how do you know what I'm thinking? Secondly, why do you assume that I'm too scared to actually speak my mind? Especially considering I have a podcast. And thirdly, I didn't ask you to bite the bullet for me. Assumption built upon assumption built upon assumption. But this guy, he was very, very clear that I would have a favourite. We all do. It's just one of those things. And I genuinely do not. I don't. When my eldest daughter was born, I could not believe how much I loved another human being. I mean, I always loved my wife, but this was different, it's not the same. It's a different kind of thing. And the feeling was I would die in an instant to save this child. It wouldn't hesitate. And I thought, when my second child was about to be born, I thought, oh my God, how can I, I don't want to share that love, but at the same time, how am I going to love another child as much as I love my first child? It's impossible. And then when she was born, I had exactly the same feeling. And I realized that there's not a finite amount of love. Love is infinite. And you can. And I'm sure if I had a third child and a fourth, I would love them as much as I love the others, So I don't know where people get off telling you that you're always going to have a favourite. I certainly don't. But I do, having been through the experience of my friend who burst into tears that time because he was the middle child, that was a failing from his parents, because he clearly, whether they, maybe they did love him the same, maybe they just, some kids are more demanding than others, my youngest daughter is very demanding of my time, much more than my elder daughter. And so, I have to be careful not to ignore my elder daughter, and not ignore her so much as just to make sure that she gets her fair share of my time, because my younger daughter will monopolise my time. It's a balancing act, but it's very clear to me that you must, if you have multiple children, you must make them all fully appreciate that you love them and support them, and that they're the most important person in the world to you. Anyway, that's my philosophy. I told you that it's not set like yours. It's a sort of organic thing, and as we're talking, it's sort of forming. So there you go. Anyway.
There's, for the sake of, I was just going to add one thing to what you said there. Your conclusion, same as mine with respect to not having a favourite. I would only add one thing, which was what you said, was when your second daughter was born, you felt all the same love. And I must admit, for the sake of listeners, mine was very much a growing thing. I didn't get that fuzzy feeling that everyone gets when you first have a child.
Really?
It very much was over time, you form this bond or this relationship with your child, or with any person really, if you're close to them. But it gets to the point where it's the same. It gets to the same point as what you said, that you do anything for them and you die for them if need be. But I didn't get that fuzzy feeling that people tend to get when a child is born.
And how about your wife? Did she?
Oh yeah, definitely.
Yeah, it's a weird thing. It's the endorphins or whatever they are. There's all the chemicals floating around in it. It's a crazy thing. I remember being absolutely terrified as well. And I got no concept of time, or, it's just a very weird experience, and fantastic experience, but also, without question, the most intense experience of my life. But anyway, we digress.
Yeah, the tangent was, I was referring to positive incentives, and the other side of that is the negative incentive, which I think should be used more often than the positive incentive, because as much as the positive incentive is useful where you need them to do something that you haven't prepared them to do, and there's no reason as to why they should do it, if they don't have to. You don't want to be bribing your kids the whole time.
No.
And so if there's an instance where they know they're supposed to do something, and it's good for them to do, it's not like you're asking them to do something that they shouldn't have to do. Let's say we use the brushing teeth example. They have to do it. If you explain to them, the brushing teeth thing is a really good example of this, which perhaps it'd be good if I go through, because it's an example which I think most parents actually do have to deal with at some stage.
They don't want to brush their teeth.
And
God,
it's a regular thing. But the negative incentive, generally speaking, is Daddy does things for you. I do lots of things that I don't have to do. So as a parent, you have to provide food, shelter, and love. But children get lots of things on top of that, which they don't necessarily have to get. I call them treats with the little one at the moment because she understands that treats are a good thing. But a negative incentive is essentially there's things that they like with your children. It's probably going to be something like gadgets, or it's going to be some sort of event that they want to do, or some place that they want to go to. And if they're not, they want to go to the cinema, right? So there's a plan to go to the cinema, and let's say they do something which they said that they were going to do, and they don't do it, or they won't do it. Let's say they don't want to. I mean, it won't be the same for you, but in the instance we talked about brushing the teeth, they say, well, I don't want to brush my teeth. And you can say, well, providing that you've gone through the reasons, you actually figured out why they don't want to brush their teeth, and you've told them why they might want to, and the reason why. And basically you can say, if you've got to the end of your tether, essentially, you can say, well, Daddy does things for you. You said that you do this for me, and Daddy doesn't have to do all the things that I do for you. And so if you're not willing to do something for me that I'm asking you to do, then I'm not willing to do X. In your case, it would be I'm not willing to take you to the cinema next week or something like that. If you think of it from a philosophical point of view, if you're in a relationship with someone and they aren't willing to do things for you, but you are willing to do them for them, that's not a win-win. And negotiation is all about looking for the win-win solution. And so if you have these win-wins in mind and you're always thinking about negotiating, you don't accept that win-lose where the child gets what they want, but you don't get what you want, because that's not fair to you. And they shouldn't learn that, they can treat someone in a relationship as a win-lose. They shouldn't want that to be the case. And so if they're really not willing to do things for you, then you're not, you don't have to do things for them. And what they'll learn is that when you actually say that I'm not going to take you to the cinema, and that they'll test it probably, and then you don't take them, then it becomes even more important when you say to them that if you don't do this, I'm not going to take you to the cinema next week or the week after or something. Then they think, well, actually, I really want to go to the cinema, so I might as well brush my teeth.
That's true.
That's negative incentive.
Yeah, that's true. That's you have to be consistent. That's the thing. You've got to be consistent with your partner as well. So you've both got to be on the same page, and that's not always easy because sometimes you have a different. I mean, my wife is Spanish and I'm English, so we've got different cultural backgrounds and everything, different languages. And incidentally, I suppose while we're talking about that, my kids have been raised bilingual. And they are completely bilingual in both English and Spanish. And people ask me, so it might make sense just as we're talking about parenting. People ask me, how did that work? I mean, and essentially it was like this. When the midwife came, and she was half Vietnamese and half English, and she said, "Oh, you're very lucky." She said, "What you need to do is you need to." I, in this case, as an English father, must always speak to the children in English, and the mother should always speak to the children in Spanish. And she said it's very important that you do that because people say, the kids will get confused, they will start mixing the languages up, and and so on and so forth. But she said it's very important you do that because even if you both can speak English and Spanish as we can. My English is a foreigner's English. My Spanish is a foreigner's Spanish, and my wife's English is a foreigner's English. It's both our second languages. And so, if I were to speak Spanish to my daughters, they would pick up my grammatical errors, my mispronunciation, and so on and so forth. And likewise with their mother. But they have always been raised. Mummy speaks Spanish to them. Daddy speaks English, and they've always been raised that way, and it's been completely the norm for them. We put them in a Spanish school, and they could speak Spanish straight away, and the teachers were like, "Wow, these children, it's incredible how quickly they've learned Spanish." Well, not really. They've always learned Spanish, they needed to know Spanish to be able to communicate with their family. So raising bilingual children, that actually turned out to be quite an easy thing, because mother speaks one language, father speaks the other language. The kids are immersed and used to both languages. The only issue that they had was that when we take them to Spain, at one point, my little one in particular got used to the fact that when people, family members and other people would speak to her in Spanish, she would answer them in English, because, funnily enough, because they were raised in England, even though their mother spoke to them in Spanish, they always answered her in English. And, they almost always speak English to each other. There was a short period of time where they would get mixed up, and Lara, my little one, she couldn't understand that people couldn't understand her. So they'd speak to her in Spanish and she'd answer them in English. And that worked perfectly well in the house, but with other family members, it didn't seem to work, and confused her a lot. But that's just a little side note about raising your kids as bilingual.
I think that's extremely valuable for anyone who is in that situation. You girls are very lucky to be bilingual. There was another point I wanted to make, which I think is one which applies pretty much almost all ages up until they get to the point where they're almost grown, and that's whatever you want back from your child, you need to first provide to your child. And what we tried to do when our little ones were babies were not to take things from them sort of without their permission, sort of like coax it with a sort of may I, or sort of almost like you're trying to get permission from them to take something away. Because what people tend to do is they tend to take things from babies and not really think too much about it.
You mean sort of rattles and dummies and things?
Yeah, they'll just walk up to them and take stuff and not really think about it. But with the principle of whatever you want back from your child, you need to first provide. What you're teaching them to do is just to take things without asking.
True.
But if you're constantly sort of encouraging them to do things voluntarily and to ask permission to take things from, if you want something, you ask permission first, then you will have taught them that lesson by doing it. And another example of that one that we're still using even now is the word no. I can't remember what it was for, but it was some sort of study, and I'm probably fudging it a little bit. But
it's good to have a bit of fudge.
They recorded...
Makes a change from chocolate.
Well,
Go ahead.
I think it was something like they recorded the words, or they recorded a mum speaking to a child in order to see what her vocabulary is like and how she conversed with a child, that sort of thing. And they realised that she was saying no to her child more than any other word or something like that.
Wow.
The amount of no's were like far more than what you would expect, basically. And coming back to that principle, obviously, if you say no to a child all the time, what are they going to learn to say to you and to everyone else?
Yeah, they're going to say no.
And it's sort of a long-winded way of saying, if you want, you have to lead by example first. So if you want to teach your children something, you have to do it yourself, basically.
Yeah, it's a very interesting concept, for sure. Okay, so have you adapted now, and are you aware when you say no, or when somebody else says no? So, for example, a grandparent or something, because that's another thing that's tricky. Is you can you can have your parenting method, but you're not always going to be the one, or you and your wife are not always going to be the ones there that are acting parents, because there are times when you're going to have babysitters, grandparents, and so on and so forth. So tricky. Yeah,
this is actually a chapter, I believe, at the end of PET, and it's about the influence that grandparents and teachers have on your children.
Oh, we can come back to that. You were going to mention it later on.
I actually wasn't going to mention it, but it's a very good thing to address.
Okay.
Because, as you say, you might have a really good approach or whatever, but if someone is looking after them and they don't, it's unbelievably easy to go from a really good approach. And if your child spends a weekend with being exposed to either children who shout and scream and say no, They pick that up unbelievably quickly.
Yeah.
And it's a challenge, What we did with my mum and Imogen's mum is actually give them. I bought a copy of PET for both of them, and we sort of said, we're trying to bring up our children with this, using this particular method, and would you mind having a read and see what you think, and let us know how you feel about it.
What did they think?
And
you come across some resistance because they would probably, if I were them, I'd probably be thinking, well, you know what, I've raised my kids, I've got more experience than you, and fair enough, you want to try this thing, but I think I know a thing or two about raising kids. I don't know. Did you get that kind of response?
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah, to be predicted.
And then it comes back to control. So, I mean, there are some people who say that if you have people who aren't willing to raise your children in a particular way, how strongly do you feel about your principles if you're just going to, do away with them whenever you... And then there are other people who think, just relax about it. My approach has been, and I don't know if it was the right approach, but my approach is just to have as much time with the children as possible.
Sounds like a good approach to me. I thought for a second you were going to say my approach was to have a raging stand-up row with my in-laws and tell him it's my way or the highway. But I think your approach is probably better.
Yeah, that wouldn't be very leading by example.
No.
I'd probably do more like I feel statements. But I mean, what children want, generally speaking, is time with both parents. So...
for sure.
Yeah, obviously that changes as they get older because they want more independence, but especially up till the age of 5 or 6 when their brain is forming or cooking, however you want to say it. Those years are unbelievably important. So I kind of countered the fact that I know that it probably was a bit ambitious to expect someone to take on that philosophy without wanting to do it themselves. So I countered it by just being the person that is going to spend as much time with them as possible. And if it's not me, then it'll be Imogen, and Imogen is on board with it as well.
Can I just sort of take things off on a very slight sidetrack? Because just recently we've had, I've got a half sister who is the same age as my youngest daughter, and she's obviously being raised completely differently to my father. He didn't raise me at all. In fact, I didn't see him for 25 years because my parents got divorced, and we talked about this in my story. But now I am in touch with him, and he's done the decent thing, and he's raising a child, which I'm completely and utterly ecstatic about, because I was a bit worried that he hadn't learned his lesson, and he clearly has. He's lost the opportunity to raise me. And he's going full on, wholeheartedly into trying to raise her. But I was talking to, I guess my stepmom, who's actually younger than me, but it's a complicated one, so we'll not go into that in too much detail. But anyway, eating was one. She is not a vegetarian, but only eats certain meats, white meat, chicken, essentially, and fish. Doesn't eat any ham, any beef or anything like that. So she has raised her child to have very specific dietary requirements based on her own eating patterns, which makes it kind of tricky when you are, when you go to a restaurant or she comes over and stays, and you have to sort of try and figure out what to cook. Have you... maybe that's a good thing, maybe not. I'm not sure. I think there's a lot of principle involved in her dietary choices, which is probably a good thing to bring to the table, so to speak, pardon the pun. Have you got any thoughts about that? Is that something that you've introduced into your parenting, your parenting method as well, about dietary requirements?
There's 2 separate issues there. I was thinking, one from the point of view of whether that's her choice or not. If she's been presented with the argument as to why it should be the case that she stays away from red meat, and she is also in agreement, then she's made the choice to not go ahead with eating that, and she can be quite happy about it, and it's just a choice. If it's the case that it's because I said so or because I do it, that's really not a good reason to...
Possible that got lost in the depths of time, but I would imagine that seeing as she's cooking, she essentially only cooks certain types of food, and then my half-sister has become accustomed to those types of food and not to other types of food. It's difficult to know exactly where her choice comes into it, if you know what I mean, because when you're so young, you are so heavily influenced by your parents that, how much is your choice and how much is your parents' choice? It's difficult to know. It's quite an interesting one, I think. And I really haven't got a clue. I just know that it's something that we've come across quite recently. And I just thought, based on your own dietary choices, I guess it's quite interesting to know how your thoughts on that particular thing. I mean, with your own children, and maybe they're a bit young at this point, but I mean, how do you approach their diet?
That's the other side of things. I said there was two ways of looking at it, from a philosophical one and from a nutritional one. Mm-hmm. And what you were referring to, I think, was the nutritional one. And Imogen is a doctor, and she advises to not have too much red. Yeah, not too much red meat, and because from a health or medicine perspective, there can be bowel cancer issues with too much consumption of red meat. As we've spoken about before, the topic of nutrition around these types of things is highly contested, and we don't really know that much about it. So I tend to follow the stuff that they say in the NHS. So they advise 5 fruit and veg per day, and one of those other things is to stay away from red meat. I think they say more than once a week or something like that. I think generally speaking, from her perspective, I would say, providing it's her choice to do it, then I don't see any issue with that. Other than
she's 10
obviously
now.
What we've spoken about before, which is the ethical issues behind eating meat, but we don't want to go into that again because we've already done it.
Yeah, absolutely. No, she's 10 years old now, so and she seems perfectly happy with these choices. I guess she may change her mind in due course, especially when she leaves home and starts perhaps living with other young people or something. I'm not sure. Certainly at the moment, she seems perfectly happy with her eating choices. This leads me on, and I'm sorry, I'm probably hijacking your thought process and your plan of how you wanted to address this. But I just thought, as we're on the subject, I have my eldest daughter was very, very bad at eating. When I say very bad at eating, she did not want to eat when she was younger. It was a real struggle, and so that's one area where we did get a lot of help. We saw specialists, nutritionists for specialising in paediatrics and so on and so forth. Ultimately, they came along and they said, look, you need to make sure that you don't ever give her any snacks, anything like this. You just got to give her a nice balanced diet in 3 meals a day. So breakfast, lunch, dinner, and that's it. Don't give her anything else in between. So we thought, okay, well, we'll try it. And they said, don't make the dining table a war zone, because you want it to be a fun place. If she doesn't eat anything, just ignore it, let it go. Don't force her to eat anything. Just if she doesn't like it, leave it. And over time, she'll get hungrier and hungrier because you're not giving her any snacks. And then she will start to eat more. And I thought, well, it's worth a go. So that was the advice, and we tried it. And the long and short of it is that she just wouldn't eat, and we weren't giving her any snacks in between, and she wouldn't eat, and she wouldn't eat. And I think we had to go back to them, see them a month later, and she was getting thinner and thinner, and it just wasn't working. So we went back and we said, look, that's the situation. She's still not eating, even when we don't give her any snacks. And they said, okay, I've got another method. Don't tell anyone we said this, but just give her anything she wants. Forget about the meal times. Just give her anything, snacks all day long. Let her graze. Let her enjoy food. whatever it is, even if it's sweets and stuff that you think is really unhealthy, if she likes it and she eats it, give it to her, and then over time introduce more and more things, and she'll develop a taste for food, and she'll enjoy food, and she'll want to experiment more over time. And so we thought, well, this is a 180-degree about turn on what you previously told us, which didn't inspire much confidence, I can assure you. But we tried it, and and the result was that she just ate junk, which was terrible, because it went against everything that we were trying to achieve. But at the same time, it was a bit of a relief because at least she was eating. There were things that she would eat, like sweets, things that we wouldn't want her to eat, and she was eating them. And so she wasn't eating anything healthy, but she was eating. And I have no idea what caused it or whatever happened, but over time, when she went to school, I think she mixed with other kids. Perhaps that's what it was. And she developed a better eating mentality. And suddenly she was eating everything, and she loved fruit. She loved vegetables. She still does. She loves fruit and vegetables. She still has a bit of a sweet tooth as well, and enjoys sweets a lot more than she should do. But she loves fruit and vegetables, and has basically a balanced diet. At the same time, our youngest daughter ate perfectly well the whole time, was never any concern. And around about the time when our oldest daughter stopped having this problem, started eating nicely, our youngest daughter basically gave up on food. So we thought, right, we've got a bit of experience with this. Maybe it's just a phase. We'll try giving her just no snacks. Didn't work. So we'll just try giving her snacks. Didn't work. And we are still at the stage now. She's 10 years old, and she is very thin, worryingly thin. And she eats, but never a full meal. And we're pretty much at a loss for how to. I mean, I'm hoping that she will grow out of it. I do remember my wife, Elvira, she was always very thin when she was a child, didn't eat very much. I must admit that when I was a kid, I had no interest in food either. And I didn't have an ounce of fat on me. Plenty of energy, always thirsty, never interested in food. And so maybe it's just a phase that people in my family are going to go through. I don't know. But I don't know if you had any, or you discovered anything when you were researching or in your methodology, you've got any answers to this particular eating issue. If you have, then please let me know.
I've got a few thoughts, but first wanted to say that I have to be careful not to speak outside my circle of competence, because if it is some other issue that is sort of beyond these principles, then it's important. I mean, I want to say to see an expert or something, but it sounds like you've already done that. So I'll just run with what I thought of, which might be a good time to introduce something called active listening.
Okay.
Which is what PET talks about throughout their whole book, basically. And that is, the aim is that you get to sort of behind the statements that are made to the feelings. So when people say things, they say things because of the feelings they have, but they don't come out and say, I feel this way, and therefore this is the action I'm going to take. They just take the action, and then there's all sorts of conflict which arises as a result of that action.
Okay.
In the PET book, the example they give is it's raining outside, and the child wants to go out, but they don't want to go out with the coat. Yeah. And the dad says, well, you have to wear a coat because, it's raining and I don't want you to get a cold or whatever. And it turns into an argument because the child doesn't want to wear a coat, and the dad wants to make sure that the child doesn't get ill. And if you were using active listening, you sort of repeat it back as a question. The child would say, no, I don't want to go out without my coat. And you sort of say, you don't like your coat? And the conclusion in this particular example is that the child doesn't want to wear the coat because no one else at school has that type of coat, and she's afraid of being bullied because she has that particular coat. And so I'm going to go into another thing which I wanted to cover, but I have to remember what your original question was. There's something called Method 1, Method 2, and Method 3 in PET. Method 1 is a win-lose for the parent. It would be, put your coat on. There's no negotiation here. You do it because I say for you to do it, and you're just going to put your coat on. Method 2, that would be win-lose to the parent. Method 2 is that the child gets to go out without the coat on because the parent doesn't want to have the argument and doesn't want to upset the child, and that's win-lose to the child because you're losing as a parent because they go out without their coat on. You don't want to upset them. And Method 3, which is what they advocate, is a win-win. In this conclusion with the coat that I said about, once you say, you do your I feel statement and you say, I don't want you to go out with a coat that you don't like, but I'm worried and I feel worried that you're going to get ill and you're not going to have your coat and it's raining outside. Is there anything that you can think of that you would be happy with so that you've got something? And it's a bit of a cheesy example, but she essentially says, I've spoken to Mum, and my mum's happy if I wear her old coat, and I'll just roll the sleeves up because her coat looks quite retro and is similar to what the kids at school are wearing or something like that.
Okay.
And so you're always searching for Method 3 as a win-win. Okay. That's an example of active listening. So to your question about the not eating, what I would attempt to do first is to try and get behind the reason as to why, the emotional reason as to why the kids aren't eating. Because if they're both doing it, because what I said earlier about...
they both have been through a phase of not eating, but the older one eats very well now. She's fantastic. The younger one, she's still Lara. She's very, very picky about food, and also sometimes she's got an appetite, sometimes she hasn't, but mostly she hasn't.
I also thought about some other reason as to why she wouldn't be, because it's some sort of concern that's manifesting through not eating, but that's obviously outside of my area of expertise, but I would attempt to figure out the emotional reason as to why she's not eating. Another example with respect to covered both in nutrition and also in brushing your teeth, because it's another popular example that comes up. Does she know why it's important to eat regularly and what it does to the body? So his example was one with a younger child, but it was a younger child that always wanted sugary stuff and didn't want vegetables, basically.
Yeah, that's a common one, sure.
Yeah. He attempted to basically say that there are foods for the tummy and there are foods for the tongue. And the tongue likes to receive sugary foods. And the tongue's always pleased when there's sugary foods. But with the tummy, the tummy wants to receive vegetables because it's important for X, Y, and Z. You teach them about nutrition and the importance of energy, how it affects your feeling throughout the day, and how that's going to make you feel and how that's going to make you act towards other people. And, you teach them all the things that you would need to know in order to make a good argument to convince them, basically. And then when they ask for example, chocolate, or, when they don't eat anything at all, his instance with the chocolate stuff was, are you asking for your tummy or are you asking for your tongue? And then the connection is made that, she is just asking for her tongue again, and that she needs to think about vegetables. And he also says to show them pictures so that they understand. So he showed her pictures of rotting teeth, and this is why I don't want you to have too much chocolate, because your teeth might rot a little bit, and teaches them about the intestines and how the body works. And essentially it comes back to what I said with respect to the business meeting in Japan, about how they really don't know these things, and they need to be told in order to understand. So if you've Those are the two things I would do. So the active listening to get behind the emotion of why is it that they don't want to eat, or why they're not eating. Because if you can get behind that, then you might be able to talk to them about why they feel that way, and then you can address that. The other is just an education thing. So, why all they know, presumably, is that you want them to eat. They don't necessarily know why they would have, or why they should eat, and not how it's going to affect them in the future.
Well, I mean, I think, she's now 10 years old, so I think, maybe I'm jumping to some conclusions, but I'm assuming that she does have a good understanding of, why diet is so important. But I get your point, and the point about, asking about food. Well, we have tried to, but there are different ways of talking to people, and to your children in particular. And I think, I've discovered as well, I think we touched upon it, that if you say, for example, did you have a good day at school? Then you're likely to get the response, yeah, fine, or something similar. Whereas if it's an open-ended question, you can start to get there to the bottom of what's really going on, but you have to do it in such a way that that it doesn't seem like like you're being a hard sale, or you're some kind of,
it's an agenda,
job
isn't
interview. Exactly. So, for example, you may have heard that there was a bully at school. So instead of saying, "Did you have a good day today at school?" The answer is yes or no. It's usually probably, yeah, it's okay. You might say, okay, are there any bullies at school? To which there may be an answer yes, or no, or I don't know. So if you then say, were you bullied? The answer will probably be no. I'm sure that this will vary. I'm thinking of my own kids. So you might want to sort of be a bit more open about it, and like you say, there's got to be an agenda towards the questions, but the questions need to be not an interrogation. So it's like, instead of how was your day at school, good, you could ask, did you have a good day at school today? Then you're going to say, yeah, fine. How was your day at school? Yeah, fine. So you've got to ask them, something more like, who did you play with at school? To which they may just say, I played with their best friend. And then you could say, what games did you play? And sort of a little bit sort of less intrusive, still quite sort of gentle questions that aren't annoying to them, and that there's a real genuine reason for asking these questions. And then just kind of build up a bit of rapport, so that and then when they do say something like, oh, we played this game and somebody else joined in, and you say, oh yeah, do you play with them a lot? And then they might start to say, well, not so much normally, but occasionally, when something, and then you kind of just go down that particular route. So you're kind of getting to the answer, but not directly. It's an indirect manner of speech and indirect questions, so that you're just sort of trying to get them relaxed, so that they will open up and speak to you about a certain thing. And I guess it's a bit of an art, and kids have different moods as well. So one thing's not always going to work, but I found that can work quite well. So indirect questions, open-ended questions. So instead of, did you have a good day? Yes, I did. Who did you play with? So they've got to answer that person. Said, oh, do you play that before? Is that a new game? Who invented that game? Or how many other people played? So you're just asking them simple questions. And I guess I could use that kind of technique with the food, and I don't think I have. So that might be, I'm not quite sure now, but my brain is starting, the little cogs are starting to whir. So I will, I'll have a think about that. That's a good one. I'll ask her if, I'm going to try and get to the bottom of why she's not hungry, which is I'm not hungry is the usual answer. So why would she not be? And clearly she's underweight, So there's a lot, you hear a lot at the moment of about kids being obese or overweight, at least. That gets all the publicity, all the everything in the media. And so, this is overeating, and I guess that can be addressed quite well with your sweet tooth method, where that's the tongue and the sugar is for the tongue. And I think that's something that might help there. I'm not sure, but personally, I don't have the obesity or overweight problem. I have the opposite. So I guess that's part of parenting, that each child is unique. So you have to be able to adapt this to the individual in question. So, but yeah, I'm going to try that.
You could potentially use some incentives as well, if all that fails. If there's something that like a treat or something that they want, or like a holiday, or a trip or something like that, that they really want that, then you can say, that's fine. I'd like to take you on that, but that's me doing something for you. So if you want me to do something for you, then I would like you to do 2 weeks of 3 meals a day or something like that. And will you promise to do that? If you promise to do that, then I will promise to take you on this trip or something like that. Obviously, that's not the best way to go about it, because obviously you don't want to encourage them to tie their eating habits to whether they're getting something in return. But if you get to the point where you've got no other option, that's something that I would look at doing.
Well, we have tried it, when she wants to go to the cinema or something. You can say, well, look, you can't go to the cinema because it's something that I will do for you. Take you to the cinema, you want to go, but if you're not eating your meals and you're sitting there, mummy's cooked this or I've cooked this for you, and you're not, you haven't eaten it, then, how can we take you to the cinema? Surely it's something that, if you finish all your food, then, we can take you to the cinema. If you finish, like you say, 3 meals a day, everything on your plate, for a certain period of time. But and we have tried it, and it has been effective actually, but only temporarily, because, like you say, then you're kind of linking it to something, and that becomes a bartering tool. My youngest daughter is extremely adept in bargaining and bartering. She's very good at that. She always has been. So, but yeah, I can see how it could complement or be used as a complement. But I quite like the the listening technique. I think I might try that one a bit more. Get a bit more, and I think the side effect of that is you build up more of a rapport and a more, develop your relationship more as well, because you get
to know them better. Yeah,
exactly. So I think that's win-win. Okay, I like that. What else have you got in store? Little gems.
There are a few principles. But they're kind of just a few things that I just wanted to mention, or make sure that I mention when we're doing this call. Is there are a couple of them which are make promises and keep promises from a very early age.
Yeah,
they should know that what you say is the truth, and if you're going to make a promise to them, you're definitely going to keep it. So the reason why I say this is because, with respect to the incentive stuff, if they have any doubt that you're going to fill up your end of the bargain, or let's say you have an example where they forget that you promised them something, and then you don't deliver on it, they might remember later the next time you try and promise something that you promised it and then they didn't deliver on it. So I mean, it's a simple one, because everyone should be keeping their promises anyway. But from a parent-child relationship, if you say that you're going to do something, you make sure you do it, and then you can say to them, do I always keep my promises to you when they have promised something? And I know I said this earlier on, but and then how would you feel if I made a promise to you and I didn't keep it? Do I always keep my promises?
Well, it's a tricky one, actually, because sometimes life gets in the way, and I have been guilty of saying, look, I'll do something with you, especially when they're busy. I'm busy, rather. So, for example, I'm really busy and they want to do something, and I say, look, I'll do it tomorrow, and then I forget, or I'll do it next week, or whatever it may be, and then I forget because I'm so busy, I wasn't really paying attention to them, and that's a real failing, and that's something that I've done. And so it's not always easy to do that, because again, my youngest daughter, she's got a memory like you can't imagine. It's sharp like a razor blade. And so she will never forget that. So if I said once, several years ago that I will do something for you. I mean, the thing is, I always intend to, and I almost always do. But I only need to fail on one occasion, and then she never forgets that and brings that up again and again and again. Well, you never keep your promises, she said. And I said, well, I never? Is that correct? And she said, well, you hardly ever. And I said, well, hardly ever? And so ultimately we get to the point where, once or twice I haven't kept it. But that's tainted now. It's difficult to get back from that. One mistake costs you years worth of hard work and effort. So I totally get what you're saying, and I can vouch for the fact that if you do not keep your promises, even if you weren't really paying attention or you've had to postpone a promise, because I'll take you to the cinema next Wednesday, and then next Wednesday something happens beyond your control, which has happened to me before. Again, it always seems to be the cinema she wants, but next Wednesday a family member comes to stay, or the car breaks down, or you whatever happens, you don't take them, and then that's it. It's you failed on your promise against you. So I guess what I'm trying to say is that over time you become a little more intelligent about the promises that you keep, and there's a little small print. So weather permitting, as long as nothing else happens, blah 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 blah, then we will take you. And maybe less specific about the day and the date as well, maybe. But that kind of thing. So, because it can really come back and bite you. I speak through experience.
Well, yeah, I mean, there's always going to be, there might be instances where it's just impossible to make it, and in which case you talk to them about it. But the reason why it's important is because, all of this stuff, you're essentially preparing for the teenage years. And for people who have a power relationship over their children, the power shifts to them in the teenage years. And if you have like a voluntary relationship where you make and keep promises with them, and they learn that from you, that when they give you a promise, they're going to keep it.
Yeah.
So the phrase that's used is "pay me now or pay me later." If you put in all this effort, it's going to take a while for behaviour change. There's no quick fix for it. But if you don't, then you'll be paying when they're teenagers, basically, because
it's not a good time to pay.
No, I mean that's why they refer to it as like the teenage years. You just because they don't recognise that power anymore from a general perspective, because you don't really have it. But if you've built up all this time of good principles, then in theory, not much should change.
That's a really good point. And the funny thing is, actually, now that you mentioned the teenage years, is that parenting goes on. It's a lifetime thing, isn't it, I suppose? But when you've mentioned it, now we've been talking, in my mind, I have you thinking of toddlers. I'm thinking of, what are they even called when they're not toddlers, but they're, I guess, primary school, for want of better word, primary school age. But then there's the teenage years and so on. Does this methodology take into account these different age categories, and are there changes and differences in the way that parenting skills need to be adopted for these different ages?
Yes. I wouldn't say I was an expert on this by any means, but from the limited knowledge I have with respect to different ages, incentives, at least negative incentives anyway, where you threaten to take things away, become less and less powerful as they get older, mainly because people rebel against authority. They want their freedom, basically. A teenager wants to have their freedom, and if they already have it, and if they can talk to you, and you're doing active listening. You're trying to actually recognize how they feel about things and not just how you feel. The method 3 with the win-win, and they're telling you the truth and you're telling them the truth. There's not much to rebel against. But if they don't have it and they really want their freedom and you're threatening them and they, it's all conflict. So it's basically all preparation for negotiation and preparation and talking.
Arguing siblings. Does it have what's it say about that? I think did we talk about that a bit earlier actually? But,
of the things that I've heard about here, one of the common examples that's used is where the siblings are arguing and they will come to the parent to get the parent to enforce some sort of rule. So they're asking that, let's say they both want a toy at the same time, or they both want something at the same time, and they're having a disagreement, and they come to you and say, Dad, I had this first, so I should have it. And the other one says, well, they've been on it for ages and I want it now. And you're expected to enforce some sort of rule, which is either going to be, it's a lose situation, basically. What they say you should be encouraged to do is to, again, with the active listening thing, you say, okay, you feel like you should have it because you're already there, and you feel that you want it because you want it and you haven't had it yet. Is that fair to say? And they'll nod, and you might get some sort of expansion on the point, like, or you might ask, is there a way that you would be happy to wait, where you could play with something else? The principle is that you ask them to solve it for themselves with the principles that we've already talked about. So like I feel statements and negotiation, and what they say will happen if you do it enough times, and you're not judging and you're not trying to enforce an agenda, you're just trying to get them to come up with an agreement between themselves voluntarily, then what will happen is they'll stop coming to you. And it's supposedly a very appealing thing to get them to teach them, in a way, to resolve the disputes that they have with each other themselves by using these methods. Yeah. So it's teaching them method 3.
Yeah, so I had one this morning, which is why I thought of it, which is one of them was sitting down on the sofa, and the other one came and sat down on the sofa too close. And so they started arguing about, well, that was my space, and you sat in my space when you weren't sitting there, was the answer. And of course, it came to me, and I don't know who's telling the truth or what's what. So I was just trying to say that it doesn't matter. The sofa's for everybody, and let's and try and change the subject and try and get them on to thinking about something else. But it didn't seem to work, and the more they just kept going on and on and on. And just when you think, oh, it's about to, they've forgotten about that and they're thinking about something else, and one of them would bring up the subject again, and it would go around full circle yet again. This sort of went on for about 20 minutes, I think. It was very unpleasant. But very often I have no idea who has caused whatever. And then, they just defend themselves because, she started it. No, she started it. And so on and so forth. So it's kind of, it's a bit of a tricky one. Yeah, if there was a very simple solution, I think, then it would be a fantastic one to hear. But evidently it's there's no quick win on it. It's something that you say, you have to bear with it over time and sort of try and get them to develop their, I guess, argumentative skills, or get to the point where they realise, like, how to influence and influence people, that you can't win an argument. So it's best not to be in one. But it's just one that I had this morning, and they just come out of the blue. And very often you don't know who the culprit is, and of course you can't defend one child over the other. So it's a bit of a tricky one for me. But
not even a lot of adults don't even know how to resolve an argument because they haven't been taught to. But
True.
The active listening thing is big in PET, but there's lots of examples they give. But I don't feel I've explained it very well, so I would go with the methods. So I teach them about method 1, about the win-lose or the lose-win, and then teach them about the method 3. So, are you using method 3 where what would be a win-win in this situation? You're not supposed to kind of recommend things because then you're encouraging them to think about what would be good for both of them rather than, because they both want it at the same time, but probably there's going to be an instance where one of them will be happy with having it later if they got something else. And so if you can try and encourage them to look at it from the perspective of, it's not just a win-lose. There's a scenario where both of them will be happy. And if you can teach them to try and look for that without you being there, then that's the best that I got on that one.
Yeah, fair enough. I mean, in terms of sitting on the sofa, there's really no. I just can't see the point in arguing about it at all. Anyway, to be honest, but it's I kind of think that it's a hierarchy thing. It's about sort of who's in charge, or sort of. Do you know what I mean? Like the way that a dog.
It's probably I mean that comes back to the active listening thing. With it's not really about that; it's about something else. I mean, that's another possibility is to.
Challenge, isn't it? It's just, well, you can't sit where you want, I'm in charge kind of thing. I mean, it may be that, I don't know. But it's certainly a very complex dynamic when you've got siblings, and you'll know more than I, because I essentially was raised as an only child up until at least I went to boarding school, where I was suddenly one of hundreds. But you were one of 3, weren't you? So you probably can take some of that knowledge of how it was when you were a child and impart that onto your 2. I mean, at the moment, one of them is a toddler and the other one is a baby. So I guess they don't argue that much. Well, I hope not. But I think you've got that all to come. But something to look forward to.
Something to work towards, method 3.
Yeah, well, certainly you'll be better prepared than most, that's for sure.
We'll see. I hope to be. There's a difference between the theory and the practice, but that doesn't mean that you stop trying to apply the theory, right?
Absolutely, and I think regardless, you can always do things better. So, like everything, you're never going to get everything perfectly right the first time. So, try again, and improve and test things out and try different approaches until you get one that works more consistently, I suppose, because nothing's going to work every time. But it's a very good thing, I think, to come into. Like you said before, in order to drive a car, you need to pass a driving test, and if you wanted to become a doctor, you'd need to go to medical school, and if you wanted to be a lawyer, you'd need to go to bar or whatever. So you need to be qualified, and there are no qualifications for children. For becoming a parent. It's just, other than I suppose that as a race we have a very, very long experience, and our parents and our parents' parents and our parents' parents all did it. So I suppose you could say that there's a sort of genetic learning we've improved by the very fact that we're all alive. Signifies that our parents weren't horrifically bad at being a parent, but at the same time there must be a way of improving and taking combined knowledge of mankind, of humanity, distilling it into books like this, and using it as a platform, and then improving upon it again and again and again. And that's the best way to approach parenting and anything else, I suppose. But what other gems are there? You must have some things that you really want to impart, things the most vital part of it, perhaps, for you.
There are a couple more. One of which is it comes back to the voluntary versus the involuntary relationships. So an example of a voluntary relationship that you might have with a business or something. I don't know if you've had this, but I certainly have. Whenever whether you interact with a particular business, they always seem to ask you how they did and how they can do better, and they want your feedback.
Yeah.
So they say, what do you want me to do more of? What do you want me to do less of? How can I be better? And explain why, if you need to do something that you otherwise wouldn't want to do. But basically, what I'm referring to is surveys. And you can have this very surface level relationship with a business, and they're asking you how they can be better at their job. Whereas parents very rarely, if ever, ask their children how they can be better at parenting.
Very good point.
And yet it's the best, it's the most important, or one of the most important at very least, relationships that you're going to have in your whole entire life.
Yeah, absolutely.
And in the instance of a dispute between siblings, like you were talking about, we had that. You could say we had that dispute today. How do you think I handled it? How do you think I can handle it better? And I know again, it has to be a win-win. So it's not, you don't want to sort of be at their whim the whole time. But if you do look back at the fact that it's a involuntary relationship and you want to be the best possible dad that you can be, or mum that you can be if you're listening to this, then the very least that you can do is ask them how you can be, a better dad.
Well,
if you care about how they feel about it.
Sorry, I was just going to say, you're kind of helping to form the most important people in your life, in your world. And so it must be the most important job, just by that definition alone. So I think that's a really, really good one, though. Just ask them how you could improve, because then you're getting their feedback, and it matters to them. And they may give you some really good advice. They may help you. They may tell you how you can resolve an issue, that you weren't able to resolve before. I mean, I might even try that with my daughter about how would you, if you had a daughter who wasn't eating enough, how would you get her to eat more?
That's a really good one, yeah. The other thing that I was going to add was this is sometimes also, you can use this for your spouse as well. So providing you have that reciprocal relationship, you can say, how can I be a better husband to you, that sort of thing.
Yeah, true.
The principle is live as if your children have the choice of who their parents should be, and they would still choose you. So
that's a nice thought.
The very least that we can do is ask them how we're doing and how we can do better.
Yeah, that's a really, really good approach to it, to be honest. Because you're right, they don't have a choice about who their parents are. We none of us do. And yet, parents vary massively, as people do. And you have people who have been abused. That's an awful, awful start to your life. I can't begin to imagine how appalling and how traumatic and how devastating that kind of relationship would be to you. Very, very difficult one to get over. To ruin your childhood. But also, how would you trust people going forward from that kind of relationship? And then you get people who are abandoned. And people who, go into, for example, Chinese girls who were very often abandoned in China because of the one-parent policy, ending up in, other parts of the world that aren't native to their language is different. They've got it's a huge, huge difference. So if you're an adopted child, you may be lucky and you may have fantastic adoptive parents who are very supportive and got a lot of experience and so on and so forth, but you may not. And a lot of kids are taken from their parents who may have drug problems or alcohol problems. And it's a huge and incredibly varied plethora, really, of different parenting skills and techniques that are out there, if you could even call a lot of these that we've talked about, or that I've just mentioned, as techniques. So I think even if you're considering how to be a better parent, you're already well ahead of the field, and your children, just by the fact that you care that much, are going to be in a stronger relationship for it, and a more supporting relationship because you care about it. And I think that's a fantastic start. But you've taken it to the next stage where you're not only are you sort of saying, well, I'm going to be a very supportive parent, but you're also trying to be the very best parent that you can be. And you're actively searching out information which can help you achieve that goal to be the best parent that you possibly can be. And it's hard to imagine which, a child that want to be with their parent, who would choose another parent if you are doing these things. So, I think I think it's my approach to it has been by and large a trial and error and sort of common sense. But you've taken it further. But I think one thing that we both absolutely do is care most about our children and show them love, and that they are, and try and be trusting, and all the other sort of things that are really fundamental to forming any kind of relationship, whether it's parenting or spouse relationship or any or just friendship. There are some amazing techniques. Some of the things that we've talked about, that last one in particular, I don't know if we call it the survey or what it's called in the book, but I think that's a tremendously clever way. Something I'd never really thought about of not only sort of strengthening your relationship, because you're hearing them and you're listening to them, you're actively asking for their opinion, and they are giving you their opinion, and you're listening to it, and that can't help but strengthen your relationship anyway, just in doing that alone. But then the information you get from it, they're directly telling you how to be better. So as long as they don't say, give me more sweets and take me on holiday more often, which is obviously, that goes without saying, obviously they're going to want that. But I think it's that's a real gem for me. That's the thing that you've said that's most resonated with me, and I'm desperate to get out there and try.
Well, waited towards the end of the call to do it, but the rest of the stuff that I've got is all about worse parents or bad parents, and how it's not really an excuse. So there's some excuses that I've got that
great.
Sort of like a rebuttal, a series of rebuttals.
Okay.
But coming back to what you were saying about the physical abuse, I was just going to add one thing, which was children who have been physically abused, violently when they were younger. There's a strong correlation to violent behaviour in their adulthood.
Yeah.
So they're sort of used to it, and they sort of have the model of, I've been taught that this is something that you can do, so they go out and do it, basically.
Yeah, and I guess accept it as well, potentially from their partner also, if they're especially if their mother or father accepted it. They were. I heard a joke, if I can remember it now. What's the word when a wife bullies a husband? There's a word for it. I can't remember what it is. Anyway, it's I remember seeing. I remember one time I was in the post office. And this isn't a parenting thing, this is a husband and wife thing, but I imagine that if this goes on between the husband and wife, then this is the model that's being shown and demonstrated to their children, and that their children will learn that that's an acceptable approach, or that that's normal, at least. And that's the thing. They may renounce it. They may say, I definitely don't want to be like that. Mummy walked all over daddy, and she wore the trousers, and I'm not going to allow that. And that could make them more aggressive, or it may make them more balanced. But either way, you are a model to your children, and the way that you have your relationship has a huge impact on your kids. And they model their future relationships based on your relationship with your spouse. So if you're loving and caring and considerate to your spouse, then that's a tremendously important thing to bring to your parenting. Your children are exposed to this. They will see it. They will know what a good relationship looks like. And if you're in a horrible relationship, and all relationships go through their ups and downs. I know mine have. But when you have a nice, strong relationship, that's a very, very powerful model for your kids. And they know what a good relationship should look like. And it's going to help them tremendously as they get older. Whereas if you have a bad relationship where there's an inequality between the pairs, or there's constant arguing, or even worse, then this is something that becomes normalized and has a huge impact on them, very, very negative impact. And when they come to their own relationship, they're not going to, that'll be the norm for them, and they're not going to be able to understand that that's not acceptable. So it's tremendously important to get that right. I think. I don't know. I suppose it's going into relationships rather than parenting, but there's a huge correlation, and you can't ignore one without the other. But anyway, the reason I mention this is because there was this guy with his wife in the post office, and she was just awful to him, and she was telling him to do this and do that, and don't do this, and don't do that, and stand up straight, and don't answer back, and this, that, and the other. This guy, I was in this queue, and the guy in front of me, he was a Jewish guy, and he turned around to me, and he said, "You know what?" In a very loud voice that she could clearly hear. He said, "You know what? We have a word for women like that." And I thought, okay, here we go. And he goes, "She's a balabosta." And I said, okay, balabosta, he said, means ball buster. And I thought, right, yes, that's definitely an apt thing. And she probably heard it but ignored it. And I thought, this is a man who he's been bullied by his wife into the point where he's a husk of a man. He's not, and their kids would have seen this. And so it's important that you have balance between your relationship. Needs to have balance. And, my mum and my dad, they got divorced. They argued a lot. And then they got divorced when I was 1. I don't have any recollection of it at all. What I do know is that I felt supported by my mother in the 25 years that I had no contact with my father. I felt completely supported by her. I felt unequivocal love. There was no question. It was always there, no matter what. I was the apple of her eye and could do no wrong. Obviously, she corrected me, and she told me off if I was naughty or whatever. But I never ever felt that she felt anything for me other than a mother's love for their child. And perhaps if they'd tried to work on the relationship, I'm not advocating, if your relationship's not going well, then split up, because the effect I've seen the effect from some of my friends of a marriage breaking up and what kind of effect that has on a child. And it's not easy, relationships don't always work. But I think it's worth pointing out that if you have a really terrible argumentative relationship, or if you have a huge imbalance where one person controls completely, it's a very controlling relationship where one person controls the other, like the case of this balabosta, then this is terrible parenting skills, for your child. And as a parent, you need to look out, number one, for your child, and the relationship that you have with your spouse or the other parent, or I guess it could be the step parent, is very, very important. And I would suggest that if it isn't going well with your relationship, then you should get help. You should go and see someone who can help to strengthen your relationship for your kids. And that's all I'm going to say on it, because it's a very complex, emotive subject. And also, as I said earlier, that it's a bit like the seasons. There are hot times and cold times, But yeah, it's definitely important to have a supportive, loving relationship, and bring that to your kids. If you're a single parent, then it's trickier. It's harder to balance in so many other ways. But I think as long as you support your kids and show them that you love them, even if you have to be at work most of the time, or you have to have a babysitter, or whatever it may be, then that's what you need to do. You need to just show them that you love them, support them, and don't show them a bad relationship if you can possibly avoid it. Anyway, that's all I'm going to say on the matter. I don't know if it mentioned that in your book, Tom, or anything like that.
Well, it comes back a little bit to you're showing them how to act in everything you do. So in the same way that the example it makes me think of for some reason is when they catch a child playing with her doll, and the child is spanking her doll,
right?
And they say, why are you hitting your doll? Why are you doing that? And she says, I'm playing mummy.
Yeah,
it's because that's what she's been taught to do. So if you're taught to either be abusive in a relationship, whether it's verbally or physically, then that's what you'll be teaching them.
Yeah.
if you're taught to be passive and you'll put up with someone who is treating you unfairly and sort of verbally abusing you, you're also teaching them how to do that. This is, I was just going to say, that's why I love philosophy so much, is because you're taught to look at things objectively. So you can say, take the way I'm being treated right now and imagine that I'm doing it the other way around. Would that person put up with that behaviour? In the instance of your ballbuster woman, I would imagine she wouldn't be willing to put up with being spoken to that way.
No.
So why should he put up with her speaking that way? But it applies just as much with, there's a lot of physical abuse issues with men towards women.
Yeah.
Would this guy be okay with another guy, beating him up? How would he feel about that? All of these things are very easy to look at objectively. And if you just look at it objectively, you should know whether you should be spoken to that way. Do I speak to you that way? And so, please don't speak to me that way because I'm not going to put up with that.
Yeah,
that's what it makes me think of.
It was a very extreme example, which is why I remembered it. But at the time, I never considered the children. It's somehow come to my mind now because we're talking about parenting and having a balanced relationship and not being abusive in any way. That it seems to me that how can you be a good role model for your kids if you have such an unbalanced relationship? It's tricky.
They pick up all that stuff as well. It's amazing how we sort of just use these default things that we've absorbed into our unconscious, into our relationships.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I've learned a lot about parenting. I think there's one thing in particular that I want to do from your summary of the book, because it's obviously, as you said, you read quite a lot of, or listened to quite a lot of books, and some of them were absolutely useless. Why were some useless? They just didn't give you any good advice, or no advice at all? What differentiated this particularly between, from some of the other books that you'd looked at? Did they give bad advice, some of them?
I think a lot of it, people have ideologies sometimes. This is all the stuff that I'm talking about, at least it tries to be very practical and gives reasons why. Whereas a lot of it, what I should really do is just take specific examples and give my arguments as to why they're not valid. But I wrote off a lot of stuff and just picked up the best stuff and ran with that as the summary of what.
Yeah, I think that's a good approach to it. It's interesting because parenting, and you hear about it a lot, but parenting changes over time as well. And you see films, for example, set in the 1950s, and especially in America, where they're all called, the kids all say yes sir to their parents, and the father is an authoritative figure, very little emotional contact with kids, and the mother would be like, well, do what you're told or I'll tell your father. So now there's the threat of bringing in the father, who is this authority figure, a bit like the headmaster at a school. Don't do that or you'll be sent to the headmaster's office. And I think that was the default. And maybe there was corporal punishment in there. Maybe that was what would happen. The father might introduce corporal punishment as well as a measure if worst came to the worst. And so that was something I think that was quite normal. I never experienced that myself, but I think it was fairly normal. Maybe the generation before us, at least, or a couple of generations back, that was what parenting was supposedly like. And it's difficult to know how accurate that is, and how has parenting really changed that much, or is this just an ideology?
I've heard some stories, definitely. That basically back up what you're saying, is that it was a little bit like that back then. But this sort of conveniently leads into one of the things that I was going to say, which is one of the most common excuses given by bad parents is that they were doing the best that they could with the knowledge that they had at the time. I'm sure have you heard that before?
Oh yeah, not just with parenting either, with everything.
Yeah. This is, I think I'm going to quote directly rather than, because this is Stefan Molyneux one, so I'm just going to read off a bit because I think it's exactly poignant as it is. So it says, this is not an excuse that we would accept from a 6-year-old facing a spelling test. If the child refuses to study and then does badly on the test, we do not give him an A because he was doing the best he could with the knowledge that he had, or rather did not have as a result of his own decisions. We do not forgive the child for his failures, but give him a failing grade. If we take on important tasks without adequately preparing for them, we cannot use our lack of knowledge as an excuse for the resulting disasters. A failure to prepare for an essential challenge chosen by us, with many years in which to prepare, does not grant us any rational excuses.
Yeah, that's a good one. Yeah, I think that was worth a quote, direct quote.
So yeah, it basically flies in the face of that propaganda of we did the best that we could. And when you actually open up that phrase to scrutiny, like, okay, what did you do? Did you go down to the local library and just, look at the parenting books that were there? Did you, get any...
Yeah, it's a very lazy answer, isn't it? It's just like...
It is, because when you actually get behind it, what you find is that they didn't do anything. They just did whatever, whatever came up.
Yeah, they didn't prepare, they didn't bother. Yeah, exactly. Unfortunately, there's all too much of that. I mean, it is kind of funny that in this day and age, in the age of the information age with the internet and things, where almost every aspect of human knowledge is available, maybe not immediately at your fingertips, but you can certainly get hold of it if you want to, without too much difficulty. In fact, it's far easier to do any kind of research now than it ever has been. That's a really weak argument, isn't it? You're right. We did the best we could with the knowledge that we had. Yeah, really doesn't mean anything at all. Yeah, I can imagine a lot of people come up with that kind of argument too.
Yeah,
and of course,
the other ones. Sorry, go on.
I was going to say it's actually true. We all do the best we can with the knowledge that we have at the time. In its own right, that's not even an argument. It's not an excuse. It's just pointless because that's true of everybody. We all do the best we can. As long as we do the best we can, we all do the best we can with the knowledge we have at the time. The fact of the matter is, I mean, if you've got cancer and you go to hospital to try and get treatment, you want to speak to someone who's actually done as much as they can to find as much of the knowledge that's available at that time. So I would expect that in 10 years' time, cancer treatment will be considerably better, and I certainly hope that's the case, than it is today. And you could say that at the time when they did the best they could, but now they could do better. And that's all about constantly looking to improve yourself and improve your skills. And that's why it doesn't work as an excuse, because it doesn't mean anything in its own right. We all do that. We all do what we can based on the knowledge we have. The fact is, you need to be looking for more knowledge. And so that's a total failure, total and utter wipeout and washout of an excuse. Yeah, what's the other one?
The other one is mainly for little ones, but it seems like the parents often to threaten to abandon their child when the child doesn't want to do what they want to do. So if you take the example of, let's say you've got little ones down the park or something, what you'll hear pretty much without fail, if you've ever done that, is that the parent will go, oh, okay, if you're not coming along because they want to go, then I'll just leave you here then. And what you're doing, or what they're doing in that instance, is you're actually threatening the lifeline of the child. What you're saying is that if you don't do what I say, then that's it for you. You're done, because they don't know how to feed themselves. They've got no home. you're essentially threatening their life if they don't come with you, and you're willing to do it. You're a person who's willing to leave them. And it's surprisingly common, but people don't think about it because lots of people do it. They just say, okay, I'm going then, I'll leave you here. And they don't think about what that means to the child.
Yeah, I think I've even done that myself, if I'm honest, but I've never said I'd abandon them. I just said, see you later then, bye. Just an attempt, but then never go anywhere. And it doesn't work anyway. But I never... when you said that, I thought, who would possibly say that? And I never equated that, see you later, bye, as a threat in any way, because I never would say, I will leave you, you're on your own, because that's just not something that would even enter my mental state to be able to say that to someone.
It's an empty threat on pretty much everyone's part, but lots of people say it, and what is stated is that
they had it said to me. But see you later, bye. I have said when they want to leave when you want to leave the park and they don't, and you say, right, we're going now, we're going, and they're like, they just stay there. And you go, come on, and they stay there, and you say, all right, see you later, bye, and then they still stay there, and then you come back anyway because it didn't even work. but it was never a sort of, it was a, when I have done that, and it's one or two times perhaps I've done that many years ago. It never worked. Firstly, and secondly, there was never any specific threat to leave them, and never any comment that I will leave you, because that obviously that's bonkers. But actually, when you mentioned it, that I have heard people say that in the park. So. They've actually said, I'll leave you here then. I'll see you later. Bye-bye. You can look after yourself. And it's like, okay. Yeah, you're not going to leave them. They know that. They're not stupid. But perhaps they don't know that initially. Maybe they learn that. That it's an empty threat. And initially it's an abject, terrifying, oh my God, my life is over. I don't know.
And then after that, they learn that you don't really mean your threats when you say them. If in fact you should be threatening at all. But
another one I always get is the 3, 2, 1. I always hear that. Got to do it in you've got 5 seconds to do something. 5, 4, 3, 2. I mean, I even used that with my daughters when they were younger. Occasionally, I'd say, right, you've got 5 seconds to do this. 5, 4. And there was no threat involved. It's like, I think, I don't know how it even started, or when it stopped. Years ago it stopped. But it was when they were toddlers, and I'm pretty sure I used it. Right, you've got to brush your teeth. You've got 5 seconds to brush your teeth. And there was no threat of anything at the end of it. So it's just, on one they'd come and they'd brush their teeth. And I remember thinking, my goodness, good job they didn't call that, because I had nothing. there was no threat. What happens if you get to the end? Not a thing, nothing at all. But I suppose the idea was that you would threaten them that they wouldn't have a certain thing. I haven't used that technique for years. I don't know if that's perhaps something that you use, but it's not something I've had to do for a long time. But I mention it because my half sister, she still gets that 3, 2, 1, no threat or anything. It's just you got 3 seconds, 3, 2, 1, and she just goes, "Mummy, stop saying 3, 2, 1. Stop counting down the whole time." And that's why I remembered it, because it's something that I know that I use myself, not all the time, but every now and again for certain tasks as well, like brushing teeth. But there was no threat at the end of it, so it wasn't like do it within 5 seconds or something will happen. It was just you've got 5 seconds to do it, and it seemed to work. But until it didn't, and then I forgot about it until just now, really, when I thought about it again. Any comments?
Well, it depends if they know what that's for. So I will use that, but I will make sure that the little one knows that if she doesn't do it by then, then she's not going to get treats in the morning or something like that. She's not going to be able to watch the program she wants to watch in the morning, something like that. Because if a lot of this stuff is like you treat children as though, they're not adults, but you treat them as valuable as if they were adults. So if you think about how you would feel if someone came up to you and they were significantly bigger and they said, right, you've got X amount of seconds to do this. 3, 2, 1. And then, what would you be thinking? You're thinking, what the hell's going to happen to me? It is a threat. And, they might think about it as, you might get the cortisol up, and they might think about it as a threat of, what is going to happen to me. So it's not good if they think that they're under, if they have fear of a person, because it's how would you like it if? That's the basically the principle of.
It's not something I used for years. I think maybe it's something that kids grow out of anyway. And you just that's just something for toddlers and not something that's just that my stepsister my half sister who's 10 years old still gets that, but it really doesn't work on her anymore because she says stop saying 3, 2, 1. So
yeah, if she knows that nothing's going to happen eventually, then she's not going to do anything with it. But, Well, I mentioned there's sometimes a justification for using force or violence or whatever if the toddler doesn't want to do something, or if a child doesn't want to do something. And like an example given is like they don't want to eat their veggies at the dinner table or something. Yeah. And an analogy for this is like being, let's say you're at the beginning of a marathon. You're about to run a marathon, but you haven't got you haven't done any training, and then you say to someone, "Look, can you give me some tips on how to run this marathon?"
Yeah,
and obviously it's really got very little to do with the being at the beginning of the race. There's very little you can say when you're in that moment because it's all about the preparation beforehand. It's too late by then.
Yeah,
that comes back to the importance of preparation. And it's kind of like what we were saying, that if there is a significant conflict with a child, it's because we have failed to prepare for that situation. And that comes into my last point. So I said at the beginning of the call that I was going to mention a topic by a YouTube video about conflict avoidance. And it essentially is that if you grow up in a household, so it's normally one parent or one person in that household that you don't want to upset, and you sort of adapt your behavior around that one person. So, you basically prioritize the fact that you don't want to upset them because they'll hold back love, or they'll be very easy to, trigger. Or and what that means for the child is that they will become conflict avoidant, and they won't know how to repair relationships after an argument because they have never learned how to do it. And this is something that, I've worked on recently because I think I've spoken to you about it indirectly because I never learned how to do that myself. And one of the ways that you can, if you are conflict avoidant, which I think happens more than people talk about. I think it's one of those things that I got to the age of 33 before I realized that I was doing it. So really? I wouldn't want to get in conflict with people because I had a fear that if I did have a conflict with them, then I wouldn't have that relationship anymore. And that is because you're brought up in a house or a home where you just don't have that security that if you have some form of conflict, then the relationship's still going to be there when, after it. And so one of the things that Teal Swan recommends you do is to it's quite sort of late in the day for adults who reach this stage, but you just have to be really honest about it. So you say, the example she gives is, you've just decided that you don't want to eat any more pizza anymore due to some whatever reason. And your friend rings you up and says, do you want to go out for a pizza tonight? And if you're conflict avoidant, then you would either just go along anyway and have pizza, even though you don't want to. You specifically don't want to. You said you don't want to, and then you're going to act in a way kind of that you won't be your true self, if you see what I mean. Yeah. Or you'll make up a reason that, you'll lie, or you won't. Essentially, you're just not being truthful with that person. And she encourages you to just be open and honest about it. So if you were to ring me up and say, do you want some pizza? I would say, what I want is to tell you that, I've just decided that I don't want to eat any pizza, and I really want to say that, but I'm fearful that if I say that, then that's going to harm our relationship in some way. And she says that if you have someone that's worth keeping in your life, they're going to be completely okay with the fact that you've said that.
Yeah, good point.
And if you've got someone who, really is all their own unit for themselves, essentially, then they're not going to hang around anyway. So,
interesting.
I think it's more worth looking up that video. It's Conflict Avoidance or something like that by Teal Swan. And again, this is another one where she does a load of other videos that I don't necessarily agree with, because she's very, you mentioned sort of hippie-like earlier on in the call. I'm more of I aspire to be more of an empiricist. So, data and factual claims rather than spiritual
feelings,
bubbly claims. But this video I thought was great, so I can't say enough good things about it.
I'll put a link for it, I suppose, in the description. I think the other thing as well is that you're called upon to give advice, and you're also considered as a parent to be the font of all knowledge, which of course you can't be, because no one person can be the font of all knowledge. It's just impossible. So it's quite interesting that your kids will come to you again and again and again and ask, and some people, but they don't know the answer. They pretend that they know the answer. And I've never been one of these people. I've never understood it. So, for example, why is the sky blue, Daddy? It's always one of these ones where I don't know the answer, so I'm going to find out for you. Let's find out. And that can actually be a really important sort of sharing moment as well. I'm not going to tell you the answer. I mean, I can give you a joke, which is okay, as long as you know it's a joke. Or I can tell you that the answer is that, I don't know why the sky's blue, let's find out together. And that can be a really, really good bonding experience. Or I can just tell you some random stuff. And I think a lot of people, I mean, this, the example is not a particularly good example, but a lot of people, especially when it comes to politics or world current events or things like this, they will tell their kids what they believe to be true, and it's a very subjective thing, whether they're right or not. And a lot of this gets carried on to their kids, and their kids sort of inherit this kind of these attitudes and things, and things like racism and bigotry get handed on generation to generation without the child, I think, ever really, in many cases, ever really considering it or understanding that it's a viewpoint and that it's not actually how things are. Like my example where I was watching the Dukes of Hazzard when I was a kid. That was a really very popular, I don't know if you ever saw it, but a very, very popular TV show. And I was sitting there in the room with my uncle and my aunt, and my mum was sitting in another room. And my uncle made the comment that Daisy Duke, who had these cut off jeans, very, very short jeans, and he said Daisy Duke has got the best pair of legs in the world. And of course, the next I went into the other room where my mum and my aunt were sitting having a chat. And I was very proudly told them the new bit of information that I just found out. And I said, Mum, did you know that Daisy Duke has got the best legs in the world? To which my mum and my aunt burst out laughing and said, who told you that? And I said, Uncle Pete. To which they were on the floor in hysterics. I thought that was the funniest thing since sliced bread became funny somehow. I don't know why I said that. But anyway, it was hilarious to them. But this is a good example. I quoted an adult because I believed that the adult knew the answer. And he never professed to know the answer, but he made a statement. And the statement was, Daisy Duke has the best legs in the world. Now that's a statement. A statement is a statement, right? And kids take these as facts. And so a lot of adults say a lot of stuff, even when they don't even really mean it as a statement, without really thinking. And the kids just absorb it, and that becomes part of their fact base. And that was a good example of one, which I remember because my mum and my aunt thought it was so hilariously funny. And then when Pete walked in, it was even funnier because it's so Pete. Who's got the best pair of legs in the world? And he's like, oh no, I know I've said something wrong, but what is it? It was one of those moments, and of course I never forgot it because it was in some ways a defining moment for me because it's something I learned from. But that's a good example, and this was sort of innocuous, but there's racism and bigotry and all sorts of other sort of horrors that get handed down from generation to generation. And so I think as parents we have to be very careful of that. And I've always been very careful, if I don't know the answer, to tell my kids that I don't know the answer and let's find out together, and not sort of make something up or not tell them. And if I think it's an opinion and I say, well, I think it's this is right, I say, this is my opinion, this is what I think. I don't just say, this is how things are. So, if you're talking about Brexit, I've got quite strong opinions about Brexit. We're not going to talk about it right now. But, my opinions might vary from yours, right? But my kids are going to hear my opinions and your kids are going to hear your opinions. And so they're not going to know about Brexit. So, if they have this trust of their parents, they're going to trust my opinion. And so it's very clear and very important to me that this must be expressed as an opinion and that they should be encouraged to form their own opinions using facts. And so that's something I feel very, very strongly about. I don't think we touched upon it really, but that's something I find.
No, I think it's a good point.
I think very, very strongly.
I think that you're an exception. You're exception to the rule for sure. Because most people do pick up these bad things and just think that they're fact. So I immediately thought about the Westboro Baptist Church, who get their children to hold up signs like "God hates gay people," that sort of thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
But they don't even know what a gay person is.
Yeah,
they just know that they're going to hell, which is a very unfortunate example. But you mentioned something which is also in the books, which is that parents feel like they have to be perfect in the eyes of the child and are very slow to admitting mistakes or slow to admitting that they don't know something.
Well, I just think that we're all human, and I'm a very great believer in making mistakes. A perfectionist is not a good thing. To be a perfectionist means that you're never going to make mistakes because you're scared of making mistakes. It's about being true to yourself, about being honest to yourself, and if you can do that, then you can admit your failings to your kids. You can admit that you don't know the answer to certain things because that's acceptable. That's normal. Parents who push their kids. I saw a few years ago, I don't know what it is. It was a one-off, and I saw a program, and I think it was the final of something to do with Child Genius UK or something. I don't know if you ever come across it or heard about it.
No.
But what it is these kids, they are competing to be the brainiac or the child genius of the UK, and it's a competition, and I think the winner gets a place at Eton or something. I might be mixing things up and getting things hideously wrong, so correct me if that's the case. But essentially, the truth of it is it was a bit like a competition, like in America, the spelling bees, that they're also popular, you see in the movies. And in this case, it was a bit like Mastermind, but for kids. And in fact, that might even be what it is, Mastermind for kids. But the parents, in most cases, were really pushing their kids. And sometimes these kids have no life whatsoever. And I've certainly come across it here where I've come across parents who have had one club after another, and the kids have got no free time whatsoever. They've got no play time, and I think play time is incredibly important. They're constantly doing one thing they've got, their day is mapped out for them entirely, and they've got no freedom. It's from when you finish school at 3:00, then you have dinner, and then you go to do this, and then you do that, and then you do this, and then you do that, and then at the end of the day, it's time to go to bed. And I think I can understand, and I think it's really good to give your kids lots of things to do, to learn, to try, to learn an instrument. It's a good thing. My kids both learned instruments. They decided they didn't like it. So I didn't push them. I was forced to learn the piano for a while when I was a kid, and I didn't get on with it. And then my mum said, okay, fine, that's it. And would I like to be able to play the piano? Yes. Did I have an aptitude for it? No. Was it something I could have learned if I'd really wanted to? Yes. Is there a real benefit to that? Am I the right kind of person? I don't know. Probably not, because, there are other things that I'd rather have learned, and I should probably have been focusing on more than the piano. And in the end, that's what happened. Pushing children to do things, to become successful academically, etc. I saw this program, and almost all of the kids were being pushed by their parents. They were under a lot of stress. They weren't enjoying it. They didn't enjoy it, and they had no free time. And they were, in some cases, they're being bullied by their parents, and nothing they did was ever good enough. And then there was this little girl, and her parents were, well, she really enjoys it, so we let her do it. And we encourage her to do it because it's something she enjoys, but we don't push her at all. It's all her. And she absolutely smashed it, and she won the whole thing. And she did it because that was her genuine interest. She wanted to be the mastermind or the genius of Britain or whatever because she enjoyed it. And she did so much better at it than all the others. But I come across kids under a great deal of stress, not being able to play. And I think playing is a fundamental, very, very important part of childhood. Essentially, their childhood has been taken away from them by parents who are pushing them too hard to achieve, at the expense of, what is it that they are trying to achieve? Well, I think there's a time.
I've heard it said that those parents are putting their failures on their children. So if they failed at something, they'll put all their hope into that child because they failed at something. That's pretty much what I hear.
So it's a tremendous amount of pressure and stress. A bit like
because it's not about them achieving it. It's about the fact that the children. It's about the fact that they themselves failed. It's about them rather than it is about what the child wants. Because if they actually listened to what the child wanted, they probably wouldn't be doing that anyway.
Yeah. Anyway, it's just something to think about. But I've always tried to encourage my kids, but I've never pushed them. And I think, sometimes you probably do need to give them a bit of a push. If they are nervous about doing something, then you think that they really enjoy to do that. They're nervous about trying it. Then one of the things that I stand by is that you shouldn't not do something in life because you're frightened of the outcome. You have to, there may be any number of reasons why you shouldn't do something, but being scared isn't one of them. And it's a bit weird because you wouldn't jump into a tank of piranha fish, or just because I should do it because I shouldn't be scared of doing it. I shouldn't jump off this cliff because I want to know what it's like to jump off a cliff, and I should be scared of it. That's just absurd. Obviously, there's a limit to these things. But I think
the difference between fear and danger.
Yeah, exactly. It comes down to, I think, something you said earlier on. That you need to, if you're in a relationship, not be frightened to be yourself because you're scared that you might damage the relationship in some way, because in a way you're damaging the relationship by not being true to yourself. So, and I think that's something I've tried to install in the kids, that they should have a healthy respect of danger, but also never be scared to follow their dreams, to try things and fail and learn by that. So I don't know. I think, we put a lot of, all our hopes probably into our kids in some way. But I would advocate trying to be the best person you can, because you are a model, a role model for your kids. But then, when you fail, admit that you failed. Show your failings and your weaknesses, because that's a strength. Anyway, that's it for me, I'm afraid. Got nothing else really, I think, to contribute to this. But, I think some of the things you've said in your philosophy and your methodology to being a parent are really, really very useful. And I'm certainly going to take one or two of those things and test them out and try them and see where we get from it.
Nice to hear you talk about your parenting. It's been nice chatting to you, my friend.
Likewise. All right. Well, have a pleasant evening, and good luck with your parenting skills.
All right. Thanks, mate.
Take care.
Bye.